Hello and welcome to Truckee Talks. I'm your host, Maya Schneider. And on this week's show, I'm proud or pleased, depending on which way it comes out, to introduce you to Anne Grogan. Anne, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, most recently, Anne is known as the publishing coordinator of Moonshine Ink. But we're going to step back into the time back machine and ask a little bit about your history and how you got to Truckee and how you got into the newspaper business.
Okay, well, I ended up in Truckee after I first moved to California because of the Grateful Dead. There were more concerts on the West Coast than there were on the East Coast.
Great. I wonder how many Californians shifted to the West Coast because of that.
It's a good question, but I know there are at least a few of us here in this area. So that's how I first ended up in California. I was down in the Carmel area. Mm-hmm. The weather was too nice for my fair skin. I couldn't take sunshine all day, every day. And so Tahoe eventually became the place I ended up.
Now, were you writing when you were down in Carmel?
I've written all my life. I've always had a journal. I've always taken creative writing courses, and I've always been in workshops and groups and sought feedback and given feedback. And it's just something that has always been there for me.
So prior to Moonshine Ink, you wrote for the Sierra Sun.
Yes.
Okay. How long were you there?
I worked freelance for about 6 months before I came on staff for about a year and a half.
Okay. And how did you get the bug for Moonshine Ink?
Oh, there were so many things. But the biggest thing Mayumi and I both felt strongly about was we needed another source of information in town. Just a different way of broadcasting the news in town. So we decided to go for it.
And that's a big decision to make.
Huge.
Moonshine Ink debuted last year.
November.
Okay. So you've put out now 6 issues or 5?
5.
5. Okay, congratulations. This is the latest edition of Moonshine Ink. I don't know if we can get that on the camera, but just to give you an idea of what that looks like and where you can find it in town. Moonshine Ink is a free and really chock full of information, especially in regards to local politics. I think the political scene is really what's covered in here. Was that your intent?
That was my intention. I really feel strongly about the fact that we have so much going on in town, and it's really hard to get all the pieces to fit together. And I really wasn't aware of how much things work together until I started going to all the different district board meetings and town council meetings and planning meetings, and it's imperative that that information be available in one place, I think.
That's right. I don't think the average Truckee citizen has the time or the wherewithal to make it to all of these different meetings, and yet they impact your daily life.
Exactly.
Whether you know it or not, that big decisions are being made out there.
Right.
You also print some articles in Spanish.
Yes.
And how was that decision made?
That was probably our most important goal, was to serve the Spanish-speaking community here in Truckee. I really think that no matter how many languages you speak, read, or write, your native language is probably the one you're most comfortable reading. And there is no source of news in town that's available to our Spanish-speaking, native Spanish-speaking residents. So we wanted to start providing some information about life in Truckee.
Are you getting much feedback on that?
It's been really positive.
Is that right?
It's been really
great.
Really great. We got our first call from a Spanish-speaking columnist last week, and he'll be submitting some columns for us.
Great.
Yes.
Great.
It's
Now,
really nice.
do you read Spanish?
I am better at speaking Spanish than reading, and then Mayumi studied Spanish, and she's better with the reading and writing than speaking.
So would she be the editor then of the Spanish?
Yes, and we actually have hired some of our translators also do our editing.
Great.
For Spanish.
Great. Yeah, because I would think that would be a hard task to manage, editing the English version as well as the Spanish version.
It is.
You have to be pretty well versed in both languages to do that.
And I'm not there.
Not yet, but you might get there.
It's amazing how reading each article really helps.
Yeah.
Build
you really
my
get
Spanish.
immersed in it, especially since you know the context of it. It helps you put the language in context.
Right.
How do you decide which articles to put in here? How do you decide what content you're going to pursue?
It's agony.
Or we could put out a 300-page newspaper every month.
That's it. That's it. When we get down to production, some of our most heated discussions are about what goes and what stays. And we probably, this issue, cut about 4 pages of material that we had that we would have liked to have seen in there. And we look at our business plan when every time we're considering what we're going to cut and what we have to cut. We look at, and we look at our mission statement. We look at other sources of information that this organization or individual might avail themselves of in the community. And if they have that opportunity and have taken it, then that might be something we have to cut first, only because it's available to other people.
It's out there somewhere.
It's out there somewhere, and we have something that's not. So,
tell us a little bit about what the future holds for Moonshine Ink. What do you want to see happen with this paper? What's the evolution?
I'd say my #1 goal is to get to the point where we can hire someone to go to the board meetings at night.
There you go.
And not necessarily because I don't enjoy them, but I miss my children.
Yeah.
I really miss the time
It's a
with
huge
my
commitment.
children. It is.
It's a huge commitment. And you're covering not only the town council, but the planning commission and the school board and the TTSA and TSD, and you start covering all the agencies. You're spread pretty thin. Yeah.
Parks and Rec, I really feel strongly about covering closely. There's so much that we have available, and that does impact our lives on a daily basis. PUD, we don't think about it when we turn the lights on, but it's important.
So this is a free newspaper, but it isn't free to publish. How
No.
do you get your income? Where does your revenue come from?
Comes from advertising, and that's a difficult aspect for both of us, I think. It's too bad we need money to go to print, because content is what we're really, really trying to focus on. And we spend most of our time doing that. So when the advertising is on the back burner, really.
Yeah. And yet, if that falls off, you lose your paper, so you've got to have the balance of both.
Right, and Mayumi takes care of most of the advertising. She's really good about that.
So let's talk a little bit about your staff. You've mentioned Mayumi's name a few times. When we look under the cover page of Moonshine Ink, we've got Mayumi Elgato.
Elgato.
And what is her background?
She is probably the most talented graphic, well, it's not just graphic design though. Well, if you look at the paper, she designs the whole thing. She's got the eye for the layout.
The layout. Well, let's talk a little bit about that, because if anybody has looked at Moonshine Ink, really the covers are very striking. The graphics are just great. Really, really nice artistry. They're very catching graphic design. You see this one, Truckee, getting it together. Mayumi does all of this?
Mayumi has done our covers. This photo, actually, our most recent issue, that photo was submitted to us by the gentleman who wrote our center story. And that's the photo we were hoping to take for the story.
Oh, for Pete's sake.
And so it worked out perfectly.
Perfectly. 66 months of skiing. It's
really neat.
So it's not all about town council and planning commission and special districts.
No. We really want a paper that serves the needs of the community. And yeah, we need to know what the politics are, but we need to know where to go get a good cup of coffee and an affordable meal, and where the best skiing is this week. And there's so much going on in Truckee.
Well, it's a lot to balance in, what, 30-something pages?
32.
Yeah. You're starting to get letters to the editor. That's been in the last 2 editions.
Yes.
Yeah, you're getting more feedback in the community now?
Feedback is tremendous. Actually, it's funny. Tony Lashbrook one day said to me right after we started, he said, you know, if you do your job right, you're really going to start making people angry. He said,
nobody knows that better than Tony.
And then he said, but if you do your job right, then they'll come back to you.
Yeah. Right.
And we've had really positive feedback all through. This is actually the first week that I've taken some heat for what we've published and printed, and I guess we're doing our job right.
And let's talk about that. We mentioned Tony Lashbrook's name. Tony is the Community Development Director for the town of Truckee. As an editor, as a publisher, you're going to take stands, and that's going to alienate some people. How do you balance that against the need for advertising dollars and the need to sell that space to continue to publish your newspaper?
Before we knew what we were going to be putting together, when we first started talking about doing this, the one thing we said was advertising will never dictate our content, never. And it's because we've seen it, we both had seen it in other publications. We were told at numerous times, we can't print that, they don't advertise with us. Or, we can't print that.
They advertise,
with us. So, and that's disturbing to me.
Yeah.
That's not the purpose of a news service, to bury news, because money's involved.
Somebody recently posed the question to me, and I think it's a really good question, so I'm going to throw it to you. As a journalist and as a newspaper publisher, how do you define the difference between what is news and what is an anomaly?
That's a really good question. I would say that in today's society, almost every anomaly is news, which is unfortunate. You can turn on Fox and there's...
Just be overwhelmed with.
Right. It could be called the anomaly news. But those aren't the issues that impact every life every day. And to me, it's the ongoing trends that are much more important. And the dollars. When they're talking about tax dollars, that affects us.
So it's really what's impacting locals is what you're thinking about here. All
yes.
Right. And what about editorial stand? Do you, as a part of your mission statement, have you and Mayumi sort of set an editorial stand or a place that you want to come from with your editorial content?
Not really, and I think partly because we're growing and we feel differently about several issues. We feel similarly about a lot of issues. I think the most important thing that I've learned doing all of this is that a lot of what I thought, I no longer think.
Yeah.
For instance, just a few years ago, there are a couple organizations in town whose actions I may not support, and yet working with Moonshine Ink, I meet the people behind the organizations, and they're wonderful. I haven't met anyone in town that I don't like dealing with.
Right.
And so that, to me, is one of the greatest learning experiences of my life, is just that there's at least two sides to every story, and each side deserves attention.
So as a journalist, how do you do that? You find an article and something interests you. You start doing your research. How do you know what you don't know?
I try to bounce it off other people. And oftentimes the best way for me to approach it is to go to the publication I would never freely, voluntarily pick up for free reading.
Okay.
For instance, if we were going to discuss Iraq right now, I might go see what Rush Limbaugh is saying about Iraq, and then I'm more prepared to argue Rush Limbaugh.
Right. And you've heard both sides, and I imagine sometimes you shift.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah. What's been the biggest surprise to you in putting together this newspaper?
That it works. We seriously thought we would be printing on 8.5 by 11 paper at home when we first started this, and every time it comes out I'm just amazed at how beautiful it is and how great it came out, and each issue is stronger than the last, and it's really nice.
Well, that's a great feeling to have when it's your baby out there and everybody else is taking a look at it.
Yeah.
What's been the biggest challenge for you with Moonshine Ink?
Oh, the biggest challenge is seeing the mistakes.
Yeah.
As a writer, I've always had a tough time when the publication comes out and I see the mistakes, or the editor created the mistake, or the typographer created the mistake, or the page just folded weird and the print came out weird. That has always been really difficult for me, and now I own everything. I have to accept responsibility for everything.
That's right, no matter where the mistake was made.
Right.
I have a bulletin board in my office that's a sort of a wall of shame of clipped out headlines with typos in them. None of them have come from Moonshine Ink, but it's one of the things that galls me as a reader. And there's something to be said for the perception that that gives the reader for the rest of the content.
Right.
Golly, if they can't get the headline right, what does that say about the content?
The content,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So you've got yourself, Mayumi. What about staff writers? Do you have just volunteers who submit information, or?
Our volunteers, everyone's a volunteer,
Mm-hmm.
and we are so grateful
Yeah.
for our volunteers.
Yeah.
I'd like to provide a forum for up-and-coming writers to get their work published. Our next issue, the April issue, it's National Poetry Month. We're hoping to have a poem on every page.
Oh,
And
great.
what I'd like to do is offer local poets a place to publish their work where they can put it on the resume they published.
And let's get that on the screen. If you are interested in information about Moonshine Ink or want to learn more, or perhaps you're a poet and you'd like to be published in the April edition, you can contact Moonshine Ink at 587-3607. That's the number on your screen, 587-3607. Of course, we've had Anne on the line by putting your name up there, but you can contact us yourself or Mayumi at that
Mayumi
telephone
as well.
number. And they'll get back to you if you've got something you'd like to say about Moonshine Ink or something you'd like to publish in Moonshine Ink.
Yes.
What kinds of other articles are you looking for? What else would you like to see in there?
Well, one of the things we cut this month that was really difficult to cut was a story about Steve Cubby from Squaw Valley, who
right.
ran for, who was a gubernatorial candidate
Right.
and a proponent of medicinal marijuana use.
Right.
And I had just read that he's up in Canada with his family, and he has a big hearing this month about whether he'll be able to stay in Canada or not. And that, to me, is a really interesting story about someone who used to live here in town. And when I started doing my research on Steve Cubby, I was amazed at the information on the web about Steve Cubby and all the stuff that goes with it, with the movement. That anything fresh,
Yeah.
it's really important to me that we keep it fresh, we keep it alive, and we write what people are interested in.
Okay, here's an example. Paul McCartney at Moody's.
Oh,
Is that is it news? Would it go in Moonshine Ink?
it would.
All right.
It would. But we don't, unfortunately.
I think they're guarding it with their lives at this point. But it's hard for me to get an impression of what's interesting to the rest of the community. And I think that's been a challenge for us here at Channel 6, is trying to put information out there that other people might be interested in.
Right.
And
Well, I think one of the main things people are we're all here for the outdoors
right.
and the environment, and planning is a huge issue. So I consider myself safe if I'm touching any one of those. But it is tough.
Yeah.
It is really tough to decide, is this what people want to hear or not? And then we ran a story this month. I had at least 40 inquiries about an issue that was going on in town. And so I said, you know, if 40 people want to approach me and ask about this, I think I better write about it.
Yeah. In terms of selecting those items, what if 40 people come up to you and say something to you, but it's just not interesting enough? How do you make that cut?
Well, one of the things I do know is I have a difficult time writing about issues that I'm not interested in, and I'd rather not publish a story that's not fit for print. And I don't know how I would say that tactfully, but I think I'm in a position now where I could conceivably ask one of our columnists, Mayumi and I too. We can certainly
bounce off of each other.
We do.
Yeah.
We do. And then there are many things that I've thought I wasn't interested in that I become interested in.
You start learning more about them.
Yes.
The general plan for the town of Truckee is up for an update.
Yes.
They're going to start that process this year. They
So
already have
exciting.
consultants on board. It's very exciting. It's going to be a big deal. and a number of people are going to be following this. How do you follow this and involve your readers without giving them general plan burnout?
That's a good question, but I think one of the things that I'm really going to try to avoid is writing the same story every month.
Right.
It's a different story.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with Perry Norris at the Land Trust about Schallenberger Ridge, and there have been so many Schallenberger Ridge acquisitions, but by the time they're all completed, it seems like you've just read the same story over and over again.
That's right.
And it's difficult to avoid that trap because you have to give the background, but I think there are ways to get around it. And I do think the community's really interested in the general plan update.
I think so, and I hope that it's a broad-based interest. All kinds of people come out for this.
I've heard people I never expected to hear from say, "Thank you for printing your town council reports," or people I never thought would be interested in the local.
Oh, that's great. That's good.
Meeting coverage,
And I'm sure that's reassuring to the town council too. Sits there and looks out at an empty chamber and thinks, "Where is everybody? Doesn't anybody care?" Just briefly, what's next for Moonshine Ink?
What's next? Good question. Each issue, we'd like to cut our production time. We're doing really well on that. Our first issue, 20 pages, took 96 hours to produce. 32 pages this time took 36 hours.
Oh, hey, that's great.
So we cut 60 hours
right
off in
off
5 months. That's great. We want to keep doing what we're doing. One of the things I would like, though, we hear from people that they love it, but we don't hear too many suggestions for how to make it better. So it would be really nice if we got that.
Yeah. Tell us what you want.
Right.
Well, again, you can contact Moonshine Ink. That's Anne Grogan or Mayumi at 587-3607. And look for Moonshine Ink around town. It's available for free. You can get the copies at Earthly Delights, at Wild Cherries,
Donner Pines Market, Glenshire Market.
Okay. There you go. So keep your eye out again for Moonshine Ink, published monthly. And look for what I call the little Easter eggs, that they're just fun things like vintage 2003 knit 3. It's a nice break from seeing the same old header on every newspaper that you read. So it's good that you've got a touch of whimsy in there. And I wish you and Mayumi the best of luck.
Thank you, Maya.
And we'll be looking forward to future editions.
Great, thanks.
Right. Again, we'd like to thank Anne Grogan for joining us here on Truckee Talks. Stay tuned. We'll be back in just a minute with upcoming community events. And welcome back to the show. We've got your calendar of events starting the week of March 5th. How do you like, we just picked our day of the week. Our day of the week is Wednesday, so it starts on March 5th. Snow Festival is here. If you're not paying attention, everybody must know Snow Festival is here, going on through March 9th. All kinds of activities going on. If you were at the opening ceremonies last weekend, I understand the Torchlight Parade was just beautiful. The North Tahoe Truckee this week has the Mardi Gras edition out there, and I was at Sunnyside last week and received a lei around my neck for that. It was a lot of fun. So keep your eyes open for all of the different events going on in and around the region through March 9th. And if you would like information on this, the telephone number to call, and I think we've got actually several of them, is coming up on my screen as soon as my editor or my publisher let it roll. Or call 583-5605 for more information. Also, through the 8th, North Star at Tahoe is hosting the USCSA College Nationals. This is top collegiate men and women skiers and snowboarders will be competing for prizes and awards all throughout the week at North Star at Tahoe. Call them 562-2288 for more information. And March 7th is the Tahoe Women's Services Ski Day at Sugar Bowl Ski Resort. Tickets are half priced, and you have to buy them ahead of time. So before Friday, get your tickets for Tahoe Women's Services Ski Day at Sugar Bowl. You can do that by credit card 775-298-0010. And the 27th annual Rotary Ski Challenge will also be Friday, March 7th at Alpine Meadows Ski Resort. Watch Rotarians from all over the western states compete on the slopes of Alpine Meadows, and come root for your favorite Rotarian from Tahoe City, Incline Village, or Truckee. I'm pulling for the Truckee Club Noon of Rotary, and of course wishing my comrades speed and fun. And remember, guys, faster and faster until the thrill of victory overcomes the fear of death. Also, March 8th, the Missoula Children's Theater presents Jack and the Beanstalk at the North Tahoe High School. Call 546-4602 for details. We're, of course, still rooting for our comrade Brian Regalo, so Brian, get better soon and come on back to Truckee. I want to thank my crew for coming back to the studio each week. And also remember, Sierra News and Views taping live the second and fourth Thursday of each month right here at the TTC TV studios. That's it for this week. I want to thank again Anne Grogan for being our guest on Truckee Talks. If you have any comments on the show or would like to join our team, and we need volunteers, call me at home, 587-4982. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.